There's a map inside every CISSP student's mind. It doesn't look like the domains, it doesn't care what book they're reading, it's the map of how they think under pressure, when it's exam time. And if you know your own coordinates, your natural mindset, you can navigate this exam with confidence. Because pressure doesn't create new habits, it'll reveal the ones you've been quietly building all along. When the clock is ticking and every answer looks half right, it's not your notes that save you, it's your thinking pattern, the path your mind takes towards certainty. These next 4 types of CISSP students don't know they're following a path until they're already lost. But when you understand how you react, how you decide, you study for it the way you're supposed to. Today, we explore the 4 archetypes I've seen again and again as far as it comes to CISSP students, not just in my students though, but also in myself. There is the over-preparer. They don't just study for the CISSP, they build a multi-phase campaign strategy. There's 5 books on their desk. Each one has sticky notes sticking out of it. Blue for technical, green for managerial, yellow for things to Google later. The over-preparer has created a spreadsheet that looks more complex than most risk registers. Columns for domain, confidence level, memory hack, and follow-up notes. Conditional formatting lights it up like a holiday tree. Red if they missed the question, orange if they got it right but guessed, green only if they nailed it and knew why. Their flashcard deck, it's not just terms, it's 1,743 custom entries in Anki, divided by Bloom's taxonomy levels. Define, compare, evaluate, apply. And yes, they tag them all. They've got a system for everything. Study during the day, podcast while folding laundry, Sean Harris audiobook while jogging. If Cybex doesn't go deep enough on digital signatures, no problem. The over-preparer already bookmarked the exact Sean Harris page where the math behind asymmetric encryption is broken down with diagrams, sidebars, and an analogy involving lockboxes. They know the Cybex explanation of SAML is too shallow, so they cross-reference it with the NIST glossary, then watch 3 YouTube videos, then ask ChatGPT just to triple-check. They have rescheduled the exam 3 times already. Not because they're not studying, but because there's always one more thing to polish. For the over-preparer, their strengths are that they are thorough, disciplined. They understand the architecture of CISSP content. While others guess where to look, they know. Threat modeling? That's in Domain 3, Cybex page 242. Tokenization versus encryption? Better check Sean Harris Domain 2. Need to memorize the incident response phases? Flip to my laminated index card taped above the coffee maker. The over-preparer are the ones who can turn around and teach the concept to someone else, sometimes in a better way than the book did. They're the students who builds a study plan for other students. But their weakness? Analysis paralysis. They hit a practice question and freeze because the wording's weird. It doesn't look like the book. They start second guessing. Wait, in Cybex it said acceptable risk, but this question uses residual risk. Do they mean the same thing? Should I look that up again? Wait, was that Domain 1 or Domain 6? The over-preparer gets stuck comparing 2 good answers, trying to find the one the book would have preferred, even though the book isn't there on test day. They might even change a correct answer to a wrong one just because it didn't feel clean enough. But this is how they adapt and pass. They pass when they realize the CISSP is not a test of perfect information. It's a test of how you think when things are vague, uncertain, or out of context. They pass when they start saying, okay, it's not exactly what I studied, but what principle is being tested here? What's the most managerial response? What's the option that best protects the organization, not just technically, but legally, financially, and reputationally? They pass when they finally accept that 80% certainty is enough to act. The turning point usually comes when they run out of time. Not exam time, study time. Life gets in the way. Work pressure, family, burnout, and they realize they have to take the exam soon. So they stop fine-tuning, they stop perfecting, and they just start choosing. Not the book answer, but the manager answer. And when they walk out of the exam, they'll laugh at how many questions felt slightly off. And they'll also know they navigated it successfully. Not with flashcards, but with confidence. Our next type of CISSP student is the flashcard fanatic. They don't study. They train like a machine. There's a reason their flashcard app has a warning message that says, "You've reviewed 5,000 cards this week. Are you okay?" They can recite port numbers in their sleep. 21, 22, 23, 25, 53, 80, 110, 443. You say Kerberos and they say 88 UDP TCP before you even finish blinking. They've made flashcards out of everything, even domain relationships, even exam tricks. There's a whole deck titled Words CISSP Uses to Mess with Your Head. Words like primarily, least likely, most effective, best first action. They've got physical flashcards in their glove compartment, digital decks on their phone, and backups in the cloud. The repetition is comforting. Each review feels like a little win, a dopamine hit. Got it right again. I'm crushing this. And they are, until the questions start to shift. Their strengths? Lightning fast recall. Their memory is a weapon. They don't waste time asking, what's the difference between identification and authentication? They've drilled that since week 1. Their ability to define terms is airtight. Security through obscurity? Bad. Non-repudiation? Digital signatures. MAC? That's mandatory access control. They've got a highly efficient mental filing cabinet that would make a SOC 2 auditor weep with joy. But their weakness? Conceptual depth. Give them a clean flashcard with a definition? No problem. But give them a story-based question where the concept is hidden inside a scenario? Suddenly, they hesitate. They can define SAML, but they get tripped up when asked about when to use it in a federated authentication scenario. They know what a digital signature is, but if the question twists it into ensuring legal enforceability of an emailed contract, they start second-guessing. And when a question has 2 right-sounding answers, they often pick the one that sounds more familiar, not the one that fits the story. But this is how they adapt and pass. They pass when they stop stacking flashcards like bricks and start using them to build a house. Because the CISSP exam isn't just a test of memory, it's a test of decision-making. The flashcard fanatic passes when they zoom out and ask, what does this term actually do for the business? How does this control interact with people, process, and tech? What's the role this plays in protecting confidentiality, integrity, or availability? They start grouping cards not by term, but by scenario. Instead of define IDS, they ask, when would I choose IDS over IPS and why? They begin to use stories as flashcards, mini cases, little scenarios with just enough fuzziness to mimic the exam. They realize that while flashcards are fantastic for building your memory, they're not a strategy. And when they start reading questions like little case studies, like mini real-world puzzles, that's when it clicks. Their memory is no longer just a collection of terms, it becomes a framework, a mental map. And that's when they stop just remembering answers and start choosing them with confidence. Then there's also the question grinder. You know this person. You may be this person. They've answered 2,000 questions, maybe 3,000. On Sundays, just for fun, they take a 150 question timed mock exam before breakfast. They're on their 3rd question bank. Thor's Udemy questions? Conquered. CCC cure? Done. Luke's CISSP questions? Barely made it out alive, but did make it. They even found a Reddit post with a random set of 50 most misunderstood CISSP questions and knocked those out on a lunch break. They don't scroll Instagram anymore, they scroll question explanations. Every correct lights up their brain like a slot machine. That little green check mark, that's their dopamine hit. But there's a subtle trap forming, one they don't see coming. Their strengths, though, is that they've built exam fluency. They know how questions are phrased. They understand distractors. They can smell a technical trap a mile away. They know when the exam is trying to lead them toward the fix-it-yourself option, so they choose the escalated one instead. Their pattern recognition is excellent. They're the ones who breeze through 50 questions in under an hour with 85% accuracy. Test anxiety, almost non-existent. They have conditioned themselves to operate calmly under a timer, with noise, with pressure. They know their rhythm. They trust their instincts. But their weakness? Overfitting. Their brain becomes trained not to think, but to recall. And the moment a question looks familiar, they jump to an answer. But sometimes, it's not the same question. It's a slightly different domain, a subtle change in phrasing, a shift in the organization's goal. Maybe this time it's about availability, not confidentiality. But they already picked their answer, because it felt like that other one they did on Tuesday. They begin to rely on gut over context, intuition over interpretation, speed over precision. They can get just enough wrong to miss the pass mark, not because they don't know the material, but because they didn't slow down. But this is how they adapt and pass. The question grinder passes when they pause. When they see a question and stop asking, "What did I answer last time?" and start asking, "What domain is this really testing? What's the intent of this scenario? If I were the security lead in this company, what would I do?" Not just what I remember. They shift their goal from being right to being aligned with the CISSP mindset. They start making mini-maps in their mind as they read questions. This is a risk assessment issue, probably domain 1. This is about secure architecture, domain 3, likely dealing with segmentation. They're using social engineering in the STEM, but the real test is on awareness training, domain 7. The question grinder, they learn to answer based on context, not comfort, and eventually pass the exam. They go from grinding questions to reading them like puzzles. Each question becomes a scenario, a decision, a small test of judgment. Not a trick, not a repeat. And when they make this shift, when they realize the green checkmark isn't the goal, but the thinking behind it is, they pass. Now let's go over the last type of CISSP student, the Zen strategist. They're the anomaly, the one who didn't post their study schedule online, didn't announce their test date in the group chat, didn't brag about finishing 3,000 questions. They study in bursts, quiet, focused sessions, early mornings before the house wakes up, late nights with lo-fi beats and a warm mug of something strong. They don't aim to memorize everything. They aim to understand just enough and trust their ability to think through the rest. On test day, they're not panicked. They walk in with quiet confidence. Not because they've mastered every definition, but because they've trained their mind to stay calm, especially when nothing looks familiar. This type of CISSP student probably has the biggest strength. They know how to make decisions under pressure. Their superpower is emotional control. They don't chase every resource, they curate. They think in principles. When they see a question about access control models, they don't recall a definition, they recall a scenario. Would this situation require more flexibility or strict enforcement? What is the business protecting here? Data integrity or user experience? The Zen strategist's answers are guided by clarity and intent. They don't need every fact. They need the frame. They're high-level thinkers, big picture people. They intuitively spot what the exam is really testing, whether it's risk, governance, or leadership. That all sounds great, but they do have a weakness. They can lack depth in the details. Because they trust their instincts so much, they sometimes skip the grind. They might get tripped up on a simple recall. Wait, which layer does SSL operate at again? Is it the BIA that comes before or after the RA? Did NIST 800-53 have 5 families or 17? They risk under-preparing the foundations because their brain is always zoomed out. They sometimes miss what's happening up close. But this is how they adapt and pass. They pass when they bring just enough structure to complement their instinct. When they realize that calm alone won't carry them through ambiguous terms. That even the strategist needs to review the acronyms. Not because the test is unfair, but because precision matters too. They don't need to become a grinder or a flashcard fanatic, but they do need to ground their mindset in just enough fact to avoid drifting. They pass when they make peace with balance, when they spend one solid weekend just nailing down the port numbers or mapping the domains, or finally answering 100 questions without pausing to philosophize every answer. Confidence plus clarity equals control. They pass because they know exactly who they are, and they sharpen their weak points just enough to carry their strengths across the finish line. And when they walk out of the testing center, they don't scream or cry or post a 14-paragraph Facebook victory story. They just smile. They nod and they say, "I knew how to think, that's why I passed." Now here's a sample CISSP practice question along with the 4 different reactions that might be given by the 4 different types of CISSP students. The question is, a business partner is requesting access to your internal HR database to automate onboarding. What is the best course of action before granting access? The over-preparer will open 5 tabs in their brain. They'll say, wait, do they mean onboarding employees or contractors? Is this related to least privilege or a third-party risk assessment? Should I look up the difference between a MOU and SLA again? And by the time they've weighed every option, they're out of time. The flashcard fanatic sees best and instantly thinks, oh, that's a key word. I remember this. Best means risk assessment. So they go with choice, conduct a risk assessment, even if the better answer is review the data sharing agreement. The question grinder has seen a similar stem before, so they pick what worked last time. Just configure access through an API gateway and monitor it with a SIM. Quick click. But the context here is business access, not technical integration. And the Zen strategist reads the question like a manager. They pause. They ask, what's the risk here? A third party is accessing sensitive data. So before I touch the tech, do we even have legal approval to share this info? They'll select, verify that a formal data sharing agreement exists outlining access, usage, and protection requirements, and move on without overthinking. That's how the same question reveals 4 different mindsets, and why knowing your mindset might matter more than knowing every answer, future CISSPs. The CISSP exam isn't just about who you are, it's about who you become when you're forced to think like a manager. So wherever you are on the synaptic map, I say good luck and keep going.